Hello, everybody. Welcome to the fireside chat this evening, and I hope you're doing well. And for those of you who wrote any exam today, financial reporting, corporate reporting, I hope that it was good. Whatever be the case, you gotta go for tomorrow's paper. So whatever happened has happened already. There's nothing you can do about it. So let's go to management accounting and let's see what we can do in respect of that. So welcome to the session this evening as we spend some time to, chit chat, share our thoughts on some few things that you need to understand to put yourself in the position to go into the exam hall, write the exam with confidence tomorrow morning, and most importantly, be able to pass the examination. So, what I want to do first is to probably take some questions if there are any for me. So, if there is any question you have, something you want to pick my thoughts on specifically, right? Something specific that you want to pick my thoughts on, you can put it in the chat for me, or you can raise your hand and I bring you up to be able to ask your question. So, anything for me before I get excited to see what I can do? Any specific questions, or everybody is in a comfortable lead? So that if we are in a comfortable lead, then we can just close and go and take a nap so that tomorrow morning you'll be in a good shape for the examination generally in that case. So any questions for me, you can bring it up quickly, then we can get into the discussion. Now, there are 4 things you must understand if you are going to pass the management accounting examination. 4 things. And over the last 12 weeks, these are the 4 things that we have been trying to work on. And as we are having this concluding discussion, I want to highlight that again for whatever time you have, less than 12 hours to go for the examination at the end of the day, a little over 12 hours to go technically at the end of the day. The first thing is the understanding of the principles underlining each of the topics in management accounting. That's the first thing we must understand. And so at this point, the key question you need to ask yourself is, do I understand the principles underlining each of the topics? That is very important. So when we take transfer pricing, performance measurement, ROSI calculation, ROI calculation, EVA calculation, dealing with issues in respect of the overall performance measurement of the organization. When we come to issues about budgeting, the functional budgets, the master budget preparation, do you understand and have at your fingertips the principles underlining each of these key areas in budgeting? We come to variance analysis, the basic variance issues, the overhead variances, the sales variances, when the entity is using more than one material, mix and yield variance, when we are selling more than one product, then sales quantity and sales mix variance. Do we have an understanding of each of these, the topics relating to each of these areas? Short-term decisions, yes, that is a very huge area, and the examiner is going to be putting that in question 5 for us. But at this point, are you strong in shutdown? Do you understand the principles? Are you strong in throughput accounting? Do you get the principles? Are you okay in break-even analysis, dealing with multiple product environments, and all of the nuances under short-term decisions, relevant cost analysis, make or buy decision, name them, all of those short-term decisions at this point, are you okay? So on the overall, that is the first thing we must really get ourselves into, underlining the underlying principles for each of the topics. But you have to understand that to be able to excel in the management accounting, there are some fundamental principles that we must know about. And that is classification of cost. So at this point, have you been able to review the principles underlying classification of cost? Because classification of cost is going to play a key role in the exam hall. If you're supposed to calculate the cost sheet or the cost card for anything, we must know the pro forma. Classification of cost will also help us to know the various cost behavior issues, and most importantly, how we can separate cost into the fixed and variable components when we have a semi-fixed, semi-variable cost using the high and low method. Because the high and low method may be applicable when in the cost environment, but also can be called on even in budgeting or variance analysis. And you've seen that we've applied it across board. So the high and low method, you must understand the principles there very well. You know that in the high and low method, we are bringing maximum total cost, minimum total cost, maximum output, minimum output. But in a question where the maximum total cost is not corresponding with the maximum output and the minimum total cost is not corresponding with the minimum output, in that case, the output becomes the basis for choosing the corresponding cost items at the end of the day. So high and low method principle, understanding that very well. Not only that, we come to the issue in respect of the overheads, and so the absorption costing principle, preparation of the profits statement under the marginal costing principle, absorption costing principle, dealing with the concept of over absorption of overheads, under absorption of overheads. All right, marginal costing principle, that is crucial because in all the short-term decisions, that is the principle we are going to be applying at the end of the day. Then you come to activity-based costing. Yes, we may have it as a dedicated question on its own in the exam hall to use the activity-based costing to estimate the cost of the entity's product, service, or an undertaking. But also, the activity-based costing principle is applicable even under the transfer pricing environment, because we could be asked to calculate the transfer price using the activity-based costing principle. And so these are fundamental, non-negotiable principles that at this point we must have at our fingertips. And so the question I then ask again is this: all these principles in all these areas, how strong are you at this moment? If you are upward of 90% of the principles, meaning you know them, that is the starting point. Because ignorance of the principle is the beginning of disaster. Because in the exam hall, all we are doing is applying the principle. So that is the first key thing we must understand when it comes to the management accounting examination, having an in-depth understanding of the principle. So if there is anything that I've mentioned, any of the topical areas that I mentioned, that you are not strong in the principles, then it is important you sit it out. You have a little over 12 hours to go to review that using the summary videos to make sure that you are strong in those principles. But that's the first part of the journey. The second part of the journey is comprehension. meaning understanding the context of the question. And this is where your English language and your calmness is going to be playing the role in the exam hall. So, have you been able to practice enough question in such a manner that you have familiarized yourself with the way the examiner is going to be stating the question and what you are looking at? Especially in the short-term decision issues, the grammar, the context of the question, in budgeting and budgetary control, the concept and the questions, variance analysis, the context of the question and the various principles. Understanding is going to play a key role. So the question is, as you are here now, as you are preparing for the exam, how far have you gone in trying to look at comprehension? But there is one thing you can do in the exam hall, and that is to be calm. Because the way the management accounting paper is, if you read hastily, then you're going to make faulty judgments and you're going to fail the examination at the end of the day. Because the context of the question must be understood to be able to apply the underlying principles based on the question. So yes, you can understand the topics, you can understand the principles, but if you miss the context of the question, the grammar, the expression, out of anxiety, fear, and you are not calm to get the context of the question well, then you're going to create disaster for yourself. But that is the second thing we must understand. Having the ability to focus and stay calm, to read the questions and understand the context of the question. That's the second thing. And so if you pay attention throughout this 12 weeks period, all we've been doing is, I don't think we ever solve any question where I finish reading before we solve the question. No. We go to the requirements, then you read. As you are reading, you are working, interpreting. That is called focus and calmness. Why? Because you don't want to get a lot of things into your head to affect your interpretation of something that you are reading generally at the end of the day. So that's the second thing you must understand. Comprehension. Having the mental capacity to decipher what has been presented to you, understanding it, and knowing how to apply the principles. And that will require focus and calmness in the exam hall. The third thing is then to apply the principles based on the context of the question. Because you see, we will see a question on budgeting. There will be a question on variance analysis. There is a question waiting for you on the short-term decisions. There is a question waiting for you on performance management. There is a question in the exam or waiting for you on the public sector issues. The question is, can you apply the principles? That's the idea. And so the application of the principles would depend on the point number 2, which is understanding of the context of the question. If you miss the grammatical expression, the context of the question, then you may not be able to know which principle to apply based on the context of the question at the end of the day. And that is very important. Once we are able to understand that, the fourth thing, which is going to be the biggest challenge of all for you to pass the examination, will be working with speed and accuracy. The problem in management accounting is that management accounting is not that the question is difficult. The problem is, by the time you finish interpreting the question or the statement, what is going to be happening is that you're going to spend a lot of time at the end of the day. So by the time you hear, get ready to stop work, or 1 hour gone, or 2 hours gone, you're already toasted. So mentally, you have to work with speed and accuracy. And that is why we tell you that the way you approach this exam is, we're going to have 70-30 or 65-35 in the exam hall. So we're going to have about 30%, above 20% questions on written. Then there's 70% area on calculation. So to optimize our time in the exam hall to be able to work with speed and accuracy, what we need is to first answer all the written questions. Now, the written questions are going to be spread across board. So we're going to have some theory questions in question 2. Question 2 over the last 3 examination that has largely been theories, because that's where we see the examiner burying some budgeting issues, some models of evaluation issues. Then we come to question 3B, we come to question 4B, sometimes question 5B also, there is a theory there. But the theories are going to be spreading across. So when you get to the exam hall, to optimize your chances, to manage your time well, you want to take out all the theories that you can answer best first. That is the strategy you need to be able to pass the examination.